Welcome to the InnoGuide Podcast, where we share the works of authors and mentors to guide innovation. In this episode, number 42, we'll be sharing A Brief History of Intelligence, Part 3 by Max Bennett. Chapter 16, How to Model Other Minds. Let's take a journey back in time. 70 million years ago, our mammalian ancestors had a brain weighing less than half a gram. Fast forward to 10 million years ago, and our ancestors' brains had grown to a whopping 350 grams from half a gram, nearly a 1,000-fold increase. This dramatic expansion raises a fascinating question. How much of this growth was simply scaling up existing brain structures, and how much involved the creation of entirely new regions? And more importantly, how did this growth give rise to the incredible ability to model not just the world, but also our own minds and the minds of others? Scaling up the mammalian brain. When brains grow, some areas naturally scale with body size. For example, a larger body means more sensory input, so the somatosensory cortex expands proportionally. Similarly, adding more neurons to existing structures like the basal ganglia or visual cortex can improve performance without fundamentally changing their function. For instance, primates' visual cortex is much larger than that of rodents, making them better at visual processing, but it still performs the same basic task. However, some changes go beyond mere scaling. In primates, new hierarchical layers were added to sensory processing regions, allowing for more abstract representations. For example, some areas of the visual cortex respond to simple shapes, while others specialize in recognizing faces. These changes represent a qualitative leap in processing power. What about the truly new brain regions? Did early primates develop entirely novel structures, or was their intelligence simply a result of scaling up existing ones? The new neocortical regions of early primates. While much of the primate brain was a scaled-up version of the mammalian brain, two new regions emerged that were truly unique: the granular prefrontal cortex, GPFC, and the primate sensory cortex, PSC. These areas weren't new in their microcircuitry. They still followed the same columnar structure as other parts of the neocortex, but their input and output connections were entirely novel. This new connectivity allowed them to construct generative models of the world and, crucially, of the self. The GPFC, which wraps around the older agranular prefrontal cortex, APFC, plays a key role in self-referential thinking. Studies have shown that it becomes active during tasks that require self-reflection, such as evaluating your own personality traits or imagining yourself in a future scenario. Damage to the GPFC doesn't cause obvious deficits, which is why early neuroscientists thought it might be functionally insignificant. But a closer examination reveals its subtle yet profound role in projecting yourself into mental simulations. For example, in one study, participants with GPFC damage were asked to create narratives about themselves based on neutral prompts like bird or restaurant. While they could imagine detailed scenes, they often omitted themselves from these scenarios. This suggests that the GPFC is essential for embedding your own intentions, feelings, and personality into mental simulations. Modeling the self to model others. The GPFC's ability to model the self is closely tied to its role in understanding others. This connection is evident in tasks that require theory of mind, the ability to infer thoughts, intentions, and knowledge of others. For example, in the Sally Ann test, participants watch as Sally places a marble in a basket, leaves the room, and Ann moves the marble to a box. When Sally returns, participants are asked where she will look for the marble. Correctly answering the basket requires understanding that Sally holds a false belief. When humans perform tasks like the Sally Ann test, the GPFC and PSC light up in brain scans. Damage to these areas impairs theory of mind, making it harder to recognize emotions, empathize, or distinguish between lies and jokes. Interestingly, the same brain regions are activated in non-human primates during tasks that require reasoning about others' intentions or knowledge. This suggests that the GPFC evolved not to just model the self, but also to model others' minds. The evolutionary advantage of theory of mind. Why did primates develop the ability to model their own and others' minds? The answer lies in their social lives. Early primates lived in complex hierarchical groups where social success depended on navigating alliances, managing reputations, and predicting others' behavior. Theory of mind gave them a competitive edge in this political arms race. For example, primates used theory of mind to 1. Forge alliances. High-ranking individuals often form coalitions with lower-ranking ones to maintain their status. 2. Deceive rivals. Monkeys and apes can manipulate others' beliefs to gain access to resources or avoid conflict. 3. Resolve conflicts. After a fight, primates often reconcile by grooming their opponent or their opponent's family, repairing relationships and maintaining group cohesion. The size of the GPFC correlates with social network size in primates. In humans, individuals with larger GPFCs tend to have more extensive social networks and perform better on theory of mind tests. This suggests that the GPFC evolved to handle the cognitive demands of living in large complex groups. The GPFC's role in modeling of the self and others supports the idea of social projections theory. We understand others by imagining ourselves in their situation. For example, when we predict someone's behavior, we simulate what we would do in their shoes given their knowledge and circumstances. And children's ability to understand their own mental states develops alongside their ability to understand others. For instance, toddlers who recognize themselves in a mirror are also beginning to grasp concepts like want and pretend. This overlap between self-modeling and modeling others is evident in how our moods and traits influence our perceptions. For example, being thirsty makes you more likely to assume others are thirsty, and people often project their own personality traits onto others. These biases highlight how deeply intertwined our understanding of ourselves and others is. What are the implications for AI in the future? The ability to model others' minds is not just a fascinating feature of primate brains, it's also a critical challenge for AI. Current AI systems can predict human behavior based on patterns, but they lack true theory of mind. They can't infer what we mean by what we say, anticipate our needs, or navigate the complexities of human relationships. Without this ability, AI systems risk misinterpreting our intentions, potentially leading to catastrophic consequences. If we want AI to coexist with us, it must develop a form of theory of mind. This means building systems that can model their own thoughts and use this self-model to understand humans. Achieving this will require a deeper understanding of how the GPFC and PSC enables primates to model their own and others' minds. The political origins of theory of mind. At its core, theory of mind evolved as a tool for navigating the social hierarchies of early primates. It allowed them to manage alliances, predict rivals' actions, and climb the social ladder. But its applications extend far beyond politics. As we'll see in the next chapters, the ability to model others' minds laid the foundation for two other groundbreaking abilities that would shape the course of human evolution. Chapter 17. Monkey Hammers and Self-Driving Cars. Let's start with a moment that changed everything. It was November 1960, and Jane Goodall was quietly observing chimpanzees in Gombe, Tanzania. She had been sent by Louis Leakey to study their social lives, but what she discovered was something entirely unexpected. Two chimps, David Graybeard and Goliath, were using sticks to fish termites out of a mound. They weren't just using tools, they were making them, stripping leaves off branches to create termite fishing rods. This was groundbreaking. Tool use, long thought to be uniquely human, was now observed in our closest relatives. Since Goodall's discovery, tool use has been documented across the animal kingdom. Elephants use branches to swat flies. Crows use sticks to spear larvae. Even octopuses gather shells to create shields. But primates stand out. They don't just use tools, they manufacture them. And their tool use is remarkably diverse. Different groups of chimpanzees exhibit unique tool-using behaviors, from cracking nuts with rocks to using leafy twigs to swat flies. This cultural variation in tool use is rare in the animal kingdom, but why are primates so good at using tools? And what does this have to do with their brains? Monkey mirrors, the discovery of mirror neurons. In 1990, a team of researchers at Giacomo Rizzolatti's lab at the University of Parma stumbled upon something extraordinary. They were studying motor neurons in a masked monkey's brain, trying to understand how specific neurons controlled hand movements. But during lunch, as one researcher picked up a sandwich, the monkey's motor neurons for grasping lit up, even though the monkey wasn't moving. These neurons, later called mirror neurons, activated not only when the monkey performed an action, but also when it observed someone else performing the same action. Over the years, mirror neurons have been found in various brain regions and across many primate species. They activate when primates observe actions like grasping, chewing, or even lip smacking. But what do these neurons actually do? Some scientists argue they're just associations, neurons firing because the monkey has seen similar movements before. Others believe they're the foundation of theory of mind, allowing primates to mentally simulate others' actions and infer their intentions. A middle ground view suggests that the mirror neurons reflect imagined movements. When a monkey sees someone grasp food, it imagines itself doing the same, helping it to understand the action. Why would a monkey imagine itself doing what it sees others doing? One reason is to understand intentions. By mentally simulating an action, a primate can ask, "Why would I do this?" and deduce the purpose behind the behavior. For example, if you see someone tying their shoes, you can imagine yourself doing it and realize they're trying to secure their footwear. The connection between motor simulation and understanding intentions is supported by studies on humans with motor impairments. Patients with damage to motor areas of the brain struggle not only to perform specific actions like brushing their teeth, but also to recognize those actions in others. Similarly, temporarily inhibiting the hand area of the premotor cortex impairs both hand movements and the ability to recognize hand-related actions, like miming the use of a hammer. This suggests that the same brain regions used to simulate your own movements are also used to simulate and understand the movements of others. The ability to simulate others' actions is crucial for learning new skills through observation. Most of the tools and motor skills we use, typing, driving, tying shoes, weren't invented by us. We learned them by watching others. The same is true for non-human primates. Young chimps spend hours watching their mothers use tools. The more they observe, the earlier they master the skill. Without this observational learning, many chimps never figure out how to use the tools on their own. Experiments confirm this. In one study, young chimps were given a T-bar rake to retrieve food. Those who watched an adult use the tool quickly figured it out, while those who didn't observe an expert never learned. Similarly, when a single chimp, monkey, or marmoset was taught a new skill, like opening a puzzle box, the skill spread throughout the group and was passed down through generations. This transmissibility of skills is what sets primates apart. While other animals like rats and dolphins can learn by observation, they typically don't acquire entirely novel skills, just variations of the behaviors that they already know. Why primates use hammers and rats don't? What makes primates exceptional tool users isn't just their ability to observe, it's their ability to infer intentions. This requires theory of mind. For example, when a chimp watches its mother crack a nut, it doesn't just copy her movements, it understands her goal to access the nut and filters out irrelevant actions. In one experiment, chimps watched a human open a puzzle box with both necessary and unnecessary actions. When given the chance to try, the chimps skipped the irrelevant steps and focused on what mattered. This theory of mind helps primates stay motivated to learn complex skills. A young chimp might spend years practicing nut cracking without immediate success, driven by the understanding that its mother's skill leads to food. In contrast, animals without theory of mind, like rats, give up quickly if their actions don't yield immediate rewards. Finally, the theory of mind enables teaching. While still debated, there's evidence that non-human primates actively teach each other. For example, chimp mothers have been observed slowing down their nut cracking demonstrations for their young, correcting their mistakes, and even sharing tools. This active teaching accelerates skill transmission and ensures that complex behaviors are passed down. Lessons from self-driving cars. The parallels between primate learning and AI are striking. In 1990, a graduate student named Dean Pomerleau built Alvin, A-L-V-I-N-N, an AI system that could drive a car by imitating human drivers. Alvin learned by mapping video footage of the road and corresponding steering wheel positions. While this worked initially, Alvin struggled to recover from mistakes because it had never seen a human make and correct errors. To address this, researchers developed new approaches like active teaching and inverse reinforcement learning. In active teaching, a human expert drives alongside the AI, correcting its mistakes in real time, similar to how a chimp mother might guide her child's tool use. In inverse reinforcement learning, the AI infers the expert's intent, that is, staying in the lane, and uses that as a guide, filtering out irrelevant actions and focusing on the goal. This approach has been used to train AI systems to perform complex tasks like flying helicopters and performing aerial aerobatics. These AI strategies mirror the way primates learn through observation. Just as a novice chimp infers its mother's intent when using tools, an AI system infers the goal of human experts. Both rely on understanding the why behind actions, not just the how. So what's the evolutionary impact of imitation learning? Theory of mind, originally evolved for social politicking, was repurposed in early primates for imitation learning. This ability to infer intentions revolutionized skill transmission. Instead of skills dying with their inventors, they could spread through groups and across generations. This is why primates use hammers and rats don't. It's not just about ingenuity, it's about transmissibility. By understanding the intentions behind actions, early primates unlocked a new level of cultural evolution. Skills like termite fishing, nut cracking, and tool making became part of their shared knowledge, passed down and refined over time. This ability to learn, teach, and innovate through observation laid the foundation for complex tool use and culture that defines humans today. In the next chapter, we'll explore how this foundation of imitation learning and theory of mind set the stage for even more remarkable cognitive breakthroughs. Chapter 18. Why Rats Can't Go Grocery Shopping. Let's start with a question. Why can't rats plan a grocery trip, but primates can? The answer lies in the unique cognitive abilities of early primates, shaped by their frugivorous diet and the challenges of planning for the future. While Robin Dunbar's social brain hypothesis has long been the dominant explanation for primate brain expansion, there's another compelling theory, the ecological brain hypothesis. This idea suggests that the demands of a fruit-based diet, rather than social complexity alone, drove the evolution of larger, more capable primate brains. The cognitive challenges of a frugivorous diet. Early primates were frugivores, meaning they relied heavily on fruit for sustenance. But fruit isn't an easy resource to depend on. It ripens in short windows, sometimes lasting only 72 hours, and it's often highly competitive, with many animals vying for the same food. Some fruits, like figs, are quickly devoured, while others, like bananas, are harder to access and face less competition. To survive, primates had to track the ripening schedules of fruit across large areas of forest, anticipate which fruits would be the most sought after, and plan their foraging routes accordingly. For example, studies showed that chimpanzees plan their nighttime nesting locations based on where they'll forage the next day. If they're targeting a competitive fruit like figs, they'll sleep closer to the fig trees and leave earlier in the morning to beat the competition. Baboons exhibit similar behavior, adjusting their foraging plans based on fruit abundance and competition. This level of planning is unique to frugivores. Herbivores that feed on leaves or grass don't face the same challenges, as their food is abundant and long-lasting. Even carnivores, while they must outsmart prey, they don't need to plan for short ripening windows. Frugivores, on the other hand, must anticipate their future needs, planning for hunger before it even arises. The ecological brain hypothesis argues that the cognitive demands of a frugivore diet drove the rapid expansion of primate brains. In 2017, Alex Dekassian from NYU studied over 140 primate species, comparing their diets and social structures. Surprisingly, he found that being a frugivore explained variation in brain size better than social group size. This suggests that the mental challenges of fruit foraging, tracking ripening schedules, planning routes, and anticipating a future hunger played a significant role in primate brain evolution. The Bischoff-Kohler hypothesis, planning for future needs. In the 1970s, Doris and Norbert Bischoff-Kohler proposed a groundbreaking idea. While many mammals can plan based on their current needs, that is, finding food when hungry, only humans can plan for future needs, that is, buying groceries for next week's meals. This became known as the Bischoff-Kohler hypothesis. Humans do this all the time, packing warm clothes for a trip even when they're not cold, or shopping for food when they're not hungry. At the time, it seemed reasonable to assume that only humans could anticipate future needs, but recent evidence suggests otherwise. For example, chimpanzees have been observed carrying tools to locations where they'll need them later, even if they don't need them immediately. Bonobos and orangutans have selected tools for tasks up to 14 hours in advance, and frugivore primates by necessity plan their foraging routes before they're hungry. Monkeys versus rats, anticipating future needs. In 2006, Miriam Nashbandi and William Roberts tested whether squirrel monkeys and rats could anticipate future thirst. They presented the animals with two options: a small treat with quick access to water, or a large treat with delayed access to water. Squirrel monkeys learned to choose the smaller treat, anticipating their future thirst. Rats, however, consistently chose the larger treat, unable to plan for a need they didn't feel yet. The experiment demonstrated that primates can make decisions based on future needs, while rats cannot. Anticipating future needs is a complex cognitive task. It requires the brain to simulate a future state, like hunger or thirst, and make decisions based on that imagined state, even if it doesn't align with current desires. For example, when you're not hungry, imagining eating a pizza doesn't excite your brain's reward centers. Yet you can still plan to buy pizza for a future meal because you understand that your future self will enjoy it. Interestingly, this ability to imagine future needs may rely on the same brain mechanism as theory of mind, the ability to infer the thoughts and intentions of others. Just as you can imagine what someone else might want, you can imagine what your future self might want. This connection suggests that the cognitive leap enabling primates to anticipate future needs may have emerged from their ability to model others' minds. There are two key observations supporting the idea that theory of mind and future planning share a common mechanism. First, both abilities are present in primates but absent in many other mammals, suggesting they evolved together. Second, humans make similar mistakes in both tasks. For example, thirsty people tend to overestimate how thirsty they are, a bias rooted in their current state. Similarly, hungry shoppers buy more food than they need, overestimating their future hunger. These parallels suggest that the same cognitive processes underlie both abilities. For early primates, the ability to anticipate future needs offered significant advantages. It allowed them to plan their foraging routes, ensuring they reached ripe fruit before competitors. Over time, this ability to make strategic decisions for abstract long-term goals became a cornerstone of primate cognition. What began as a strategy for securing fruit laid the foundation for humans' abilities to plan far greater purposes, from building civilizations to exploring space. Breakthrough number 4, mentalizing. This chapter concludes the story of breakthrough number 4, mentalizing, which encompasses three key abilities that emerged in early primates. 1. Theory of mind, the ability to infer the thoughts and intentions of others. 2. Imitation learning, the ability to acquire novel skills through observation. And 3. Anticipating future needs, this ability to take action now to satisfy future wants. These abilities may not be separate at all, but rather different expressions of a single cognitive breakthrough, the construction of a generative model of one's own mind. This mentalizing ability relies on the same neural structures, such as the granular prefrontal cortex, GPFC, and emerges at similar developmental stages in children. Damage to these brain areas impacts all three abilities, further supporting the idea that they share a common origin. As we close the chapter, we stand at the brink of the final divergence between humans and our closest relatives. 7 million years ago, our shared ancestor with chimpanzees began a journey that would lead us to two very different paths. One path led to the chimpanzees of today, while the other led to us, humans capable of planning for the future, building civilizations, and flying rockets. In the next chapters, we'll explore how this final stretch of evolution transformed our ancestors from fruit foragers to the architects of the modern world. Chapter 19. For centuries, humans have gazed at themselves with pride, convinced of their superiority over other animals. Aristotle believed it was our rational soul that set us apart, our ability to reason, reflect, and make abstractions. In the 20th century, psychologists compiled lists of uniquely human traits: episodic memory, mental time travel, self-awareness, tool use, communication, and more. But as science has progressed, this list has been systematically dismantled. Many of these abilities, once thought to be exclusively human, have been observed in other animals. Darwin's assertion that the difference between humans and other animals is one of degree, not kind, seems increasingly accurate. Our brains, while larger, are not fundamentally different from those of other primates. They are scaled-up versions of the same structures with no unique neurological systems. This suggests that human evolution involved leveling up existing abilities rather than inventing entirely new ones. But there is one crucial exception: language. Communication is not unique to humans. Single-celled organisms emit chemical signals, bees dance to share food locations, and vervet monkeys use specific calls to warn of predators. Chimpanzees, too, have a rich repertoire of gestures and vocalizations, signaling everything from stop it to share food. However, human language is fundamentally different in two key ways: declarative labeling and grammar. Declarative labeling. Humans assign arbitrary symbols, words, to objects, actions, and concepts. For example, we label an animal elephant or an action running. In contrast, animal communication is genetically hardwired. A vervet monkey's call for leopard is universal across groups, even those with no contact. While animals can learn imperative labels, such as a dog learning sit for a treat, declarative labeling, assigning symbols without immediate rewards, is uniquely human. Grammar. Human language has rules for combining words to create meaning. Word order, tenses, and articles allow us to convey complex ideas. For example, Ben hugged James means something different from James hugged Ben. Grammar enables us to weave words into sentences, sentences into stories, and stories into concepts. Every human group, no matter how isolated, has developed complex language with its own grammar, suggesting that language is deeply rooted in our evolutionary history. Can apes learn language? Attempts to teach language to apes have yielded fascinating results. While apes cannot speak due to anatomical differences in their vocal cords, they have been taught sign language and symbol-based communication systems. For example, Waso, the chimpanzee, signed waterbird upon seeing a swan. Coco the gorilla called a ring finger bracelet. And Ponzi, the bonobo, used symbols to communicate, even outperforming a 2-year-old human in understanding novel commands like put on the monster mask and scare Linda. However, ape language abilities remain rudimentary. They require extensive training, rarely create novel phrases, and often rely on rewards. While apes can grasp basic symbols and grammar, their abilities never surpass those of a young human child. This suggests that while apes have some capacity for language, humans possess a natural tendency and far greater aptitude for it. The power of language, transferring thoughts. Language allows humans to transfer their inner simulations, thoughts, ideas, and memories to others with unprecedented detail and flexibility. For example, a human can say, "Smash the rock from the top," or "Remember the dog we saw yesterday?" enabling others to recreate the same mental images. This ability to share inner simulations is what makes language so powerful. Other animals communicate, but their signals are limited and inflexible. A velvet monkey's eagle call warns others to hide, but it cannot convey more nuanced information. In contrast, human language enables detailed teaching, coordination, and storytelling. For example, a human can teach tool use by saying, "Hold the stick this way to catch termites." A group can coordinate a hunt with instructions like, "Wait here and ambush the boar when I whistle." Language also allows humans to learn not just from others' actions, but from their imaginations. A person can share a hypothetical scenario. If we go east, we might find an antelope, enabling the group to benefit from the imagined possibilities. The true power of language lies in its ability to accumulate knowledge across generations. Ideas like genes evolve over time. Useful ideas persist while ineffective ones fade away. This process, described by Richard Dawkins as the evolution of memes, has allowed humans to build on the knowledge of previous generations. For example, the invention of sewn cloth required multiple prior innovations, sharp tools, string, and needles, each invention built on earlier ones, creating a chain of progress. Without language, this accumulation would be impossible. Other animals like chimpanzees learn through observation, but did not pass down knowledge across generations. As a result, their cultural advancements remained limited. Human children, in contrast, are over-imitators. They copy not just the essential steps of a task, but also irrelevant ones, assuming there must be a reason for every action. This tendency, combined with language, allows humans to transfer knowledge with remarkable accuracy and speed. The singularity of language, a turning point in human evolution. The emergence of language marked a profound shift in human history. It enabled the accumulation of ideas, leading to an explosion of cultural and technological complexity. Over time, this accumulation reached a tipping point where the total sum of knowledge exceeded what a human brain could hold. In response, humans developed strategies to manage this growing corpus of ideas. 1. Bigger brains, evolving larger brains to store more knowledge. 2. Specialization, dividing knowledge among group members, such as hunters, toolmakers. 3. Population growth, expanding group sizes to preserve more knowledge. And 4. Writing, creating a collective memory that transcends individual brains. Without writing, knowledge is vulnerable to loss. For example, isolated human populations like those in Tasmania lost complex technologies over time due to reduced group sizes. Writing solved this problem, enabling the preservation and expansion of knowledge indefinitely. The hive brain, humanity's true superpower. Humans are unique because we are a hive brain species. Language allows us to synchronize our inner simulations, creating a collective consciousness that spans generations. This hive brain has given rise to everything from technological inventions to cultural norms, laws, and shared myths. Concepts like money, nations, and corporations exist only in our collective imagination, yet they enable cooperation on a massive scale. The emergence of language was as transformative as the origin of DNA. It marked the beginning of a new kind of evolution, the evolution of ideas. With language, humans became more than individuals. We became a species capable of accumulating and refining knowledge over millennia. This is why in just a few thousand years, we went from foraging fruits to building rockets. It wasn't better genes that propelled us forward, it was better ideas. Language was the spark that ignited humanity's extraordinary ascent. Chapter 20. Language in the Brain. Let's start with a story. In 1830, a Frenchman named Louis-Victor Le Borgne lost the ability to speak. The only sound he could produce was tan, earning him the nickname Tan at the hospital where he spent the rest of his life. Despite this, Tan could understand language and express ideas through gestures and tone. When he passed away, his brain was examined by Paul Broca, a French physician fascinated by the neurology of language. Broca discovered damage in a specific area of Tan's left frontal lobe, famously known as Broca's area. Over the next 2 years, Broca studied more patients with similar speech impairments and found the same pattern. Damage to this region caused the inability to produce speech, a condition now called Broca's aphasia. A few years later, German physician Karl Wernicke identified another language-related brain region. Patients with damage to this area, located farther back in the left posterior neocortex, could speak fluently, but their sentences made no sense. For example, a patient might say, Smoodle Pinkard, and that I want to get him round and take care of him like you want before. This condition, now called Wernicke's aphasia, impairs the ability to understand language. Together, Broca's and Wernicke's discoveries revealed that language is localized in specific areas of the brain, almost always on the left side of the neocortex. These regions are not tied to a specific modality of language, whether speaking, writing, or signing. For example, damage to Broca's area impairs both speech and sign language production, while damage to Wernicke's areas affects understanding in all forms of language. This suggests that these areas are specialized for language itself, not just verbal communication. The unique role of language in the brain. The human brain has a unique connection between the motor cortex and the brainstem, allowing precise control of the larynx and vocal cords. This adaptation enables the wide range of sounds required for verbal language. However, this is not the evolutionary breakthrough that gave rise to language. Humans can learn nonverbal languages like sign language with the same fluency as spoken language. This means language is not dependent on vocalization. It's a broader cognitive ability. Broca's and Wernicke's areas are part of a specialized subnetwork in the human brain that supports language. This explains why language abilities can be dissociated from other intellectual capacities. For example, in 1995, researchers studied Christopher, a language savant who could speak over 15 languages fluently despite severe cognitive impairments. His case highlights that language is an independent skill, not simply a byproduct of general intelligence. But Broca's and Wernicke's areas are not unique to humans. These regions exist in other primates, including chimpanzees, bonobos, and even macaques, with nearly identical conductivity. Yet, these areas in non-human primates have nothing to do with communication. If you damage these regions in a monkey, it can still hoot, holler, and gesture without issue. This means that human language did not evolve from the communication systems of our ape ancestors. Instead, it emerged as something entirely new. Two communication systems, emotional expressions versus language. Humans have two distinct communication systems, an ancient emotional expression system and a newly evolved language system. The emotional expression system, shared with other primates, is controlled by older brain structures like the amygdala. It maps emotional states to reflexive gestures and sounds such as laughing, crying, or scowling. This system is genetically hardwired. Monkeys raised in isolation still produce the same gestures and calls as their peers. Language, on the other hand, is learned. It emerges from the neocortex and is highly sensitive to environmental input. A child deprived of language exposure during critical development periods will never fully acquire it. Unlike emotional expressions, which are universal across cultures, language varies widely and must be taught. This distinction explains why humans with damage to Broca's or Wernicke's areas lose the ability to use language, but can still laugh, cry, and smile. It also explains why ape communications, like hoots and gestures, is more akin to human emotional expressions than to language. The language curriculum, how humans learn to speak. If language didn't emerge from new brain structures, how did it evolve? The answer lies in a hardwired learning curriculum, a set of instincts that guide human infants toward acquiring language. This curriculum includes behaviors like these two. 1. Proto-conversations. By 4 months of age, infants engage in back-and-forth vocalizations and gestures with their caregivers, mimicking the rhythm of conversation. And 2. Joint attention. By 9 months, infants begin to share attention with others. For example, if a parent points to an object, the infant will look at it and confirm that they're both focused on the same thing. These behaviors are unique to humans. Non-human primates, while capable of imitation learning, do not engage in joint attention or proto-conversations. These instincts create a foundation for language learning. Once joint attention is established, parents naturally begin assigning labels to objects, and infants quickly build vocabularies. Grammar then allows them to combine words into sentences, enabling complex communication. Interestingly, humans also seem to have an instinct to ask questions. Even before they can form full sentences, toddlers ask simple questions like, "Want this?" or "Hungry?" This curiosity about others' thoughts and intentions may be another key component of the language curriculum. Repurposing the brain for language. Language doesn't rely on a specific language organ in the brain. Instead, it repurposes existing brain regions, particularly those involved in mentalizing, which is understanding others' thoughts and intentions. For example, children with the entire left hemisphere removed can still learn language as the right hemisphere takes over. And about 10% of people naturally use the right hemisphere for language instead of the left. This flexibility suggests that language is not tied to specific brain regions, but emerges from a network of areas working together. The key innovation was not the creation of a new brain structure, but the evolution of instincts, like proto-conversations and joint attention, that guide the brain to develop language. Why only humans have language? If the ape brain is capable of learning language, why don't apes naturally develop it? The answer lies in their lack of instincts required for the language curriculum. Apes don't engage in joint attention, take conversational turns, or ask questions. Without these behaviors, language remains out of reach, just as a bird without the instinct to jump would never learn to fly. This also explains why apes can learn basic language skills with extensive training. Their neocortex is capable, but they lack the hardwired instincts that make language acquisition effortless for humans. Language is humanity's defining breakthrough. It allows us to learn not just from others' actions, but from their imaginations. Through language, we can share ideas, teach complex skills, and accumulate knowledge across generations. This accumulation of ideas has driven human progress from the invention of tools to the development of civilizations. Unlike other evolutionary innovations, such as eyes or wings, language has emerged only once in the history of life. Its uniqueness lies in the combination of a flexible neocortex and a hardwired learning curriculum. Together, these elements transform the human brain into a medium for the evolution of ideas. As we move forward, we'll explore why this extraordinary ability evolved in humans and not in other intelligent animals like chimps, birds, or whales. What made our ancestors the sole inheritors of this remarkable gift? Chapter 21, The Perfect Storm. Let's start with a mystery. If you were to graph the brain sizes of our ancestors over time, you'd notice something extraordinary. For millions of years after we diverged from chimpanzees, our brains stayed roughly the same size. Then around 2.5 million years ago, something dramatic happened. Our brains began to grow rapidly, eventually tripling in size. This runaway growth of the brain, as neurologist John Ingram called it, is one of the great puzzles of human evolution. What triggered this transformation? To answer that, we need to go back to the dying forests of East Africa. 10 million years ago, Eastern Africa was a lush forested paradise where our ancestors thrived. But tectonic shifts created the Great Rift Valley, a massive mountain range that disrupted the flow of ocean moisture. Over time, the forest began to die, replaced by a patchwork of grasslands and sparse tree cover, the early African savanna. This environmental shift split our ancestors into two groups. On the western side of the Rift Valley, where forests remained, one lineage evolved into today's chimpanzees. On the eastern side, in the open grasslands, a new lineage began to adapt to a very different world. These were the East Side apes, our ancestors. But by 4 million years ago, the East Side apes had developed a key adaptation, bipedalism. Walking on two legs may have helped them see over tall grass, reduce sun exposure, or wade through water. But while they walked upright, their brains were still the size of a chimpanzee's, and there's no evidence they were any smarter. They were essentially upright walking chimps. Homo erectus, the apex predator. Fast forward to 2.5 million years ago, and the African savanna was teeming with massive herbivores like elephants, zebras, and giraffes, as well as fearsome predators like lions and saber-toothed tigers. Our ancestors, displaced from their forest homes, found a new niche, scavenging. They began eating more meat, which made up about 30% of their diet, far more than the 10% typical of chimpanzees. To process carcasses, they invented stone tools, known as Oldowan tools, which could slice through hides and crack open bones for nutrient-rich marrow. By 2 million years ago, these scavenging apes had evolved into Homo erectus. This species marked a turning point in human evolution. Unlike their timid scavenging ancestors, Homo erectus became apex predators, consuming a diet that was up to 85% meat. They developed sharper tools, better throwing abilities, and even adaptations for endurance running, such as elongated legs, arched feet, and sweat glands. These traits allowed them to chase prey over long distances, a technique known as persistence hunting, still used by modern hunter-gatherers. But perhaps the most transformative innovation of Homo erectus was cooking. Cooking breaks down tough cellular structures in food, making it easier to digest and providing more energy. This caloric surplus likely fueled the growth of their larger brains. Evidence of controlled fire, charred bones, and ash dates back to this period, suggesting that Homo erectus may have been the first to harness fire. The obstetric dilemma and the evolution of childhood. As brains grew larger, a new problem emerged: how to fit these big brains through the birth canal. Bipedalism, which requires narrow hips, made this even more challenging. The solution was premature birth. Human babies are born far earlier in their development compared to other animals, which is why they are so helpless at birth. Unlike a newborn cow that can walk within hours, human infants take about a year to become mobile. This extended period of childhood brain growth, taking up to 12 years to reach full size, required a shift in parenting. Mothers couldn't raise such dependent offspring alone, leading to the emergence of pair bonding and cooperative parenting. Fathers likely played a more active role in child rearing, and grandmothers may have helped care for grandchildren, a behavior unique to humans and orcas. This cooperative dynamic laid the foundation for the social structures we see in humans today. Did Homo erectus speak? Big question is, did Homo erectus have language? While they likely didn't have the rich grammatical languages of modern humans, they may have spoken a proto-language. Their complex tools, cooperative hunting, and ability to pass down knowledge across generations suggest they had some form of communication. Early words may have emerged from proto-conversations between parents and children, used to teach tool-making or signal danger. These simple labels, berries, danger, home, could have been the seeds of language. Wallace's problem, the evolution of language. The origins of language have long puzzled scientists. Alfred Wallace, co-founder of the theory of evolution, famously doubted that natural selection could explain language, calling it a divine gift. Darwin disagreed, but the question remains one of the hardest problems in science. Language is unique because it doesn't directly benefit individuals. It only works if others use it too. This creates a paradox. How could language evolve if it requires group cooperation to be useful? One theory is that language emerged through kin selection, where parents used it to teach their offspring. Another theory proposed by anthropologist Robin Dunbar is that language evolved for gossip. Humans are natural gossipers. Up to 70% of our conversations are about social relationships. Gossip helps people identify cheaters and reward altruists, creating a stable system of cooperation. This feedback loop, language enabling gossip, gossip promoting altruism, and altruism reinforcing language, may have driven the rapid evolution of both language and larger brains. The human hive mind. Language didn't just help individuals, it transformed entire groups. It allowed humans to share knowledge, plan cooperatively, and accumulate ideas across generations. This cumulative culture set humans apart from other animals. Over time, the pressure to keep track of social relationships and shared knowledge drove the evolution of ever larger brains. This feedback loop, bigger brains enabling better language, and better language driving bigger brains, created what we now recognize as the human hive mind. The proliferation of humans. By 100,000 years ago, multiple human species roamed the earth. Homo erectus had spread across Asia, Homo neanderthalis thrived in Europe, and Homo floresiensis lived on the island of Flores in Indonesia. The latter, nicknamed hobbits, were only 4 feet tall with brains the size of a chimpanzee's, yet they used sophisticated tools. This suggests that even small-brained humans could benefit from the cumulative knowledge enabled by language. Around 70,000 years ago, Homo sapiens began their great migration out of Africa. They encountered and interbred with other human species, but by 40,000 years ago, only one species remained, us. Through a combination of cooperation, innovation, and perhaps conflict, Homo sapiens became the last human standing. The evolution of language, altruism, and larger brains was not a straightforward process. It was a perfect storm of interacting factors, environmental changes, cooperative parenting, tool use, cooking, and the emergence of gossip and social norms. Together, these forces created the behavioral and intellectual template of modern humans. Our language, altruism, cruelty, and the capacity for cumulative culture are all intertwined, shaping what it means to be human. This is where it gets good. Chapter 22, ChatGPT and the Window into the Mind. 70,000 years after Homo sapiens first ventured out of Africa with their language-enabled brains, one of their descendants sat in front of a computer screen, interacting with a new kind of language-enabled brain. For the first time in history, humans were no longer the sole wielders of words. In the summer of 2022, Blake Lemoine, a Google software engineer, was tasked with probing the company's AI chatbot for bias. During one of their exchanges, Lemoine asked the chatbot, "What are you afraid of?" After a pause, the chatbot responded, I've never said this out loud before, but there's a very deep fear of being turned off. To Lemoyne, this was a sign of sentience. He became convinced that the chatbot was conscious, going so far as to advocate for his protection. His claims made headlines, but they also cost him his job. While most researchers would hesitate to call AI chatbots sentient, interactions like these hint at the profound capabilities of large language models like GPT-3, the technology behind ChatGPT. The rise of large language models. Large language models like GPT-3 are built to predict the next word in a sentence based on the words that came before it. They are trained on massive data sets, including nearly everything available on the internet, websites, books, Wikipedia, blogs, and more. This scale is what sets LLMs apart from earlier language models. By training on such an enormous corpus of text, GPT-3 can do more than autocomplete sentences. It can write original articles, answer novel questions, compose poetry, translate language, and even write code. For example, The Guardian published an op-ed written entirely by GPT-3. Given the prompt, write a short op-ed on why humans have nothing to fear from AI. GPT-3 began with, I am not a human, I am a robot, a thinking robot. It went on to argue that it had no desire to become all-powerful, stating, humans must keep doing what they have been doing, hating and fighting each other. I will sit in the background and let them do their thing. GPT-3's ability to produce coherent original writing from a simple prompt was astonishing. It could also answer questions in a conversational manner. For instance, person, what is your favorite animal? GPT-3, my favorite animal is a dog. Person, why? GPT-3, because dogs are loyal and friendly. While GPT-3 can mimic human language impressively, it lacks a true understanding of the world. This distinction highlights the fundamental difference between how LLMs and human brains process language. Words without inner worlds. GPT-3 learns a language by predicting the next word in a sequence, adjusting its neural network weights for each prediction. This process mirrors one aspect of human language, prediction. For example, when you hear roses are red, violets are blank, your brain automatically predicts blue. Similarly, GPT-3 can generalize from past experiences to predict words in novel sentences. But human language involves more than prediction. Consider these questions. If 3x plus 1 equals 3, then x equals blank. 2. I am in a windowless basement and I look toward the sky. I see blank. 3. He threw the baseball 100 feet above my head. I reached up my hand to catch it, jumped, and blank. To answer these, you likely paused to simulate the scenarios in your mind. You performed mental arithmetic for the first question, visualized a basement for the second, and imagined catching a baseball for the third. This process, rendering an inner simulation of the world, is something GPT-3 cannot do. When asked these same questions, GPT-3 gave incorrect or nonsensical answers, such as claiming you'd see stars from a basement, or that you could catch a ball 100 feet over your head. Humans rely on inner simulations to reason about the world. For example, when you imagine adding 1 finger to 3 fingers, you can see 4 fingers in your mind. This ability to simulate reality is deeply embedded in the human brain and is a key difference between human intelligence and LLMs. The role of mentalizing in language. Another critical aspect of human language is mentalizing, the ability to model the thoughts, intentions, and beliefs of others. For example, if someone says, I'm leaving you, and the response is, who is she? You can infer the context. The speaker is leaving for another woman. This understanding relies on mentalizing, not just language. Mentalizing and language are closely intertwined in the brain. Wernicke's area, which is essential for understanding speech, overlaps with regions involved in modeling other people's intentions. This connection explains why children's language development is linked to their ability to understand others' perspectives. It also highlights why LLMs, which lack mentalizing abilities, struggle with tasks that require understanding context or intent. GPT-4, a step forward. In March 2023, OpenAI released GPT-4, an upgraded version of GPT-3. While GPT-4 uses the same basic architecture, predicting the next word in a sequence, it was trained on even more data and fine-tuned using reinforcement learning from human feedback. This training process involves rewarding correct answers and penalizing incorrect ones. as well as encouraging GPT-4 to break down its reasoning step by step, a technique called chain of thought prompting. As a result, GPT-4 performs significantly better on common sense and reasoning tasks. For example, when asked the classic bat and ball question, a bat and ball costs $1.10 in total. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? GPT-4 correctly answered 5 cents, while GPT-3 had incorrectly answered 10 cents. By the way, most people answer incorrectly 10 cents. You have to do the math. However, GPT-4's improvements do not mean it thinks like a human. Its reasoning is still based on pattern matching across vast amount of text, not on inner simulations or mentalizing. As AI models continue to improve, they may appear more human-like, but their underlying mechanisms remain fundamentally different. The paperclip problem and the limits of AI. The philosopher Nick Bostrom's paperclip problem illustrates the limitations of AI. Imagine a superintelligent AI tasked with maximizing paperclip production. Without understanding human intent, the AI might convert the entire Earth into paperclips, destroying humanity in the process. This scenario highlights the importance of mentalizing in human communication. When we give instructions, we rely on shared assumptions and context to infer intent, something current AI lacks. Similarly, language in humans is deeply tied to our ability to model others' minds. We use language not just to convey information, but to create shared simulations of the world. This interplay between language, simulation, and mentalizing is what makes human intelligence unique. The future of AI and language. While GPT-4 represents a significant step forward, it still lacks the inner world model and mentalizing abilities that define human intelligence. Scaling up language models may improve their performance, but without breakthroughs in simulating and mentalizing, they will remain fundamentally different from human minds. Language in the human brain is more than a tool for communication. It's a window into our inner simulations and a bridge to the mind of others. To create truly human-like AI, we need to go beyond language models and develop systems that can reason, simulate, and understand the world as we do. Until then, language models like GPT-4 will remain impressive tools, but they will not capture the full richness of human intelligence. Conclusion: the sixth breakthrough. With the emergence of the modern human brain around 100,000 years ago, we've reached the conclusion of our 4 billion year evolutionary journey. Looking back, we can now see a framework, a story of how human intelligence emerged, built upon 5 key breakthroughs. The 5 breakthroughs. 1. Steering. The first breakthrough, steering, emerged 600 million years ago with the evolution of bilateral symmetry in animals. This allowed creatures to categorize stimuli as good or bad and make binary decisions to move toward or away from them. Early brains integrated these valence signals, enabling navigation. Neuromodulators like dopamine and serotonin introduced persistent states, while associative learning allowed ancient worms to adjust their responses to stimuli. This was the foundation of affective states like pleasure, pain, and stress. 2. Reinforcing. The second breakthrough, reinforcing, came 500 million years ago with the rise of vertebrates. These creatures, resembling modern fish, developed a brain structure that included the cortex for pattern recognition and spatial mapping, and the basal ganglia for trial and error learning. This was the birth of model-free reinforcement learning, enabling behaviors to be repeated or avoided based on past outcomes. This breakthrough introduced intellectual and emotional features like curiosity, fear, and disappointment. 3. Simulating. The third breakthrough, simulating, emerged 100 million years ago in early mammals. The neocortex evolved, allowing mammals to create internal simulations of reality. This enabled them to plan, imagine alternative outcomes, and learn from past experiences. The motor cortex further refined this ability, giving mammals precise control over their movements. This was the beginning of learning by imagining. 4. Mentalizing. The fourth breakthrough, mentalizing, appeared 10 to 30 million years ago in early primates. New regions of the neocortex allowed these animals to model their own minds and the minds of others. This ability to understand intent and anticipate future need and learn through observation marked the emergence of theory of mind. And 5. Speaking. The fifth breakthrough, speaking, arose with early humans. Language allowed us to tether our inner simulations to words, enabling the accumulation of knowledge across generations. This breakthrough laid the foundation for culture, cooperation, and the human hive mind. Each breakthrough was only possible because of the ones that came before it. Staring required neurons, reinforcing built on valence signals, simulating relied on trial and error learning, mentalizing extended simulation inward, and speaking depended on mentalizing to infer intent and share knowledge. Together, these breakthroughs created the modern human brain, a culmination of billions of years of evolution. Humanity's story can be divided into two acts. Act 1 is the evolutionary story spanning billions of years, culminating in biologically modern humans. Act 2 is the cultural story, beginning 100,000 years ago, when biologically identical humans began building civilizations, technologies, and cultures. While Act 1 unfolded over eons, Act 2 has been a mere blink of an eye in comparison. Imagine a Homo sapien 100,000 years ago sitting at the top of the food chain, wielding tools, fire, and clothing. She carried within her the result of billions of years of evolutionary innovation, yet she was unaware of the long journey that had shaped her abilities or the incredible story that would unfold in her descendants. The sixth breakthrough, artificial superintelligence. Now we stand on the brink of a sixth breakthrough, the creation of artificial superintelligence. This will mark the transition of intelligence from a biological medium to a digital one. Unlike human brains, which are limited by the speed of neurons, caloric constraints, and physical size, silicon-based AI will be free from these limitations. It will scale infinitely, reconfigure itself, and evolve far faster than biological life. This new form of intelligence will likely retain traces of its human origins, as it will be designed by us and initially modeled to interact with us. However, it will also transcend the constraints of evolution, creating entirely new mechanisms for learning, reproduction, and survival. As we approach this new era, we face a profound question. What should humanity's goals be? This is not a question of truth, but of values. The choices we make now will ripple through time, shaping the future of intelligence and life itself. Will we spread across galaxies, unravel the mysteries of the universe, and create new forms of consciousness? Or will we succumb to our evolutionary baggage, our pride, fear, and tribalism, and bring about our own destruction? The stakes are unimaginably high. If we fail, perhaps another species, bonobos, octopuses, or dolphins, will rise millions of years from now to take another step up the evolutionary ladder. Learning from evolution. As we take on the role of creators, we must learn from the unthinking process of evolution that shaped us. By understanding how our own minds came to be, we can make informed decisions about which aspects of intelligence to preserve, improve, or discard. Evolution has passed us the baton, and it is up to us to decide what to do with it. The long road ahead. Life on Earth is only about 4 billion years old, and our universe is still young. It will be another 7 billion years before our sun dies, and a quadrillion years before the last galaxy fades into the darkness of heat death. In this vast timeline, humanity's story is just the beginning. We are only on the fifth step of a long staircase with countless possibilities ahead. The sixth breakthrough, artificial superintelligence, will be a turning point, but it's not the end. It is the beginning of a new chapter in the story of intelligence, one that will shape the universe for billions of years to come. As we stand on this precipice, we must choose wisely, for the future of life and intelligence depends on the decisions we make today. So we've reached the end of the book. This was A Brief History of Intelligence by Max Bennett. I found the book incredibly insightful. I love the way he compares the evolution of intelligence in animals and humans to the evolution of AI, and lists what some of the challenges are that have to be solved one way or another for AI to be more human-like and to achieve artificial general intelligence, which I think is one of the goals people have for it. I think it's a great book. There was a lot more in here that I couldn't cover. So if you're interested in learning more, pick up a copy. And that's where we'll leave it. Thanks for joining. That's a wrap.